Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Healthified Mother podcast, where we discuss ways to enjoy pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. I'm Corey Dugan, and this is my lovely wife, Christy. Today we are going to be talking about boundaries in marriage. Christy is going to show you how her Paint to Heal sessions work, and we're going to discuss and we're going to do some healing work around boundaries.
So if you want to participate in the session today, you're going to want a notebook and a piece of paper and a pencil, some kind of writing utensil. And then if you want to paint along with us, you're going to need tape, watercolor paper. I like Canson 140 pound. Any kind of paint palette will do. You can get the kind from the dollar store. I have fancy little paints, but you don't need those. Water, a big brush, and a smaller, I like a round number 6. And some kind of a palette to mix your paint up in, and a paper towel for dabbing and blotting and all of that.
All right. Fun fact, this is the second time we're recording this episode, and I have a little earpiece in to make sure we're getting the sound this time. So, Christy, why don't you go ahead and explain how your Paint to Heal sessions work, and then we'll go ahead and experience it right along with you.
Sure. Okay, so I always begin with breath work and grounding. Then I begin painting, and we discuss whatever topic we're going over that day. I usually do some guided imagery. I might do some EFT tapping, scribbling, affirmations, intentions, clearing some trapped emotions, any other sort of kinesthetic release of energy, releasing old beliefs, releasing old patterns that are no longer serving you. And then we install new beliefs and new patterns and new affirmations and intentions based on God's word and what feels right for you. Each session is unique. I don't use every technique in every session that I do, and I use intuition to guide me to create a session that feels right for each specific topic that we're addressing. So let's dive right in and start with some breath work. So take your shaka hand. You know how in Hawaii you do the shaka? Well, you're going to use your pinky and your thumb, and you're going to cover one nostril and breathe in, hold at the top, switch, breathe out, and then do it again. So we're going to do that 5 times. So go ahead and just breathe with me. Breathe in, hold, switch, breathe out, switch, hold, So this helps to calm anxiety, to give us more oxygen, help calm a racing heart, or just clear our minds from clutter and help us be prepared for the work that we're about to do. So then I like to get grounded. So let's make sure we're grounded. It's really important our body is grounded before we try and do any of this work, because it has a hard time taking effect and really sticking if we're not grounded. So take a deep breath. Invite your grounding mechanism to be present in your body, turned on and ready to go. If you are struggling to stay grounded, I have a grounding session you can try. But for today, we're just going to do a quick little grounding session. So we're going to start by connecting heaven and earth. So I'll show you how that works. I'm going to stand up. Okay, you are going to take your hands and You're going to push one up and up to the ceiling and one down to the floor, away in opposite directions. And you're looking up to the heavens, connecting, and then pushing down towards the earth, connecting to the ground. Making sure you are connected both to a higher source of power, the divine, Heavenly Father, God, and then also to the earth. Okay, and then I like to do one called All Laced Up, where you take your right foot, cross it over your left, put your hands out, flip them, clasp them. Sorry, I got my hair in my face. And then you're going to look at each finger and will it to move as you look at it. And then once you've done that, you're going to switch and go the other way. Okay, and that just integrates the right and the left sides of the brain and helps you to be present and connected in the here and now. Okay, now I want you to imagine that you are a tree, that your legs and you have roots growing down and out into the ground for miles in all directions, rooting you and connecting you to Mother Earth. And then you have branches growing up and out for miles in all directions and connecting and balancing to the magnetic field. Breathe. Okay, you should be grounded now. All right, so I'm going to lead you through a little scribbling exercise that I learned from my sweet friend Allie Duzette. One simple way to release trapped beliefs and patterns and stuck energy, or just move out of a funk or a blue mood, is to scribble. This is really good for little kids because they don't have to understand what they're doing or anything. They're just moving, right? They're just getting out that stress and built up cortisol and emotion and all of that. So you're going to take a pencil and a piece of paper. We're going to write at the top some kind of intention that you want to release. So when you think about relationships and boundaries in relationships, what comes up for you? Write that down. It could be something like, I feel stuck and I struggle to communicate effectively in my relationship with my spouse, or anything else that comes up. And then once we have that written, we're going to set a timer and we're going to start scribbling. So I'm going to set the timer right now. And we're going to begin scribbling for 2 minutes. And as you're scribbling, don't try to control your hand. Don't worry about how it looks. Some people end up doodling. Some people get really into it and they might even rip or tear their paper. It's okay. You're just trying to release stuck energy surrounding your intention. And just keep going. You have set an intention to clear as much as you can in 2 minutes. So we're not trying to scribble out everything about a difficult relationship or something like that in 2 minutes. That could take us weeks. We're just setting whatever we can release, whatever we can move and clear out in 2 minutes.
By the way, could you explain a little bit more about how you'll know you're done?
So you'll know you're done when your hand automatically moves into an oval or ellipse shape. which usually happens right around 2 minutes because you've set that intention and your mind knows, okay, this is as much as I can get out in 2 minutes, right? So when your hand naturally moves into that ellipse shape, then you know that you're done, which my hand is now moving into that ellipse shape. So it usually happens right around 2 minutes. It could happen before or after the timer goes off. That's okay. All right, so I am done. I will give you until the timer goes off, which should be pretty shortly. There we go. Okay, so we are going to start painting now. And we're painting a pumpkin today for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's fall. And number 2, because when I think about boundaries, I think about Peter, Peter, Pumpkin Eater. You know the nursery rhyme, Peter, Peter, Pumpkin Eater had a wife and couldn't keep her, put her in a pumpkin shell, and there he kept her very well. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I would like to be kept in a pumpkin shell. I don't feel like I want to be kept anywhere. So boundaries, sometimes we think of them as a cage or a wall or a shell or some kind of protection, but they're not really protection for us. We'll address more of that in a minute, but we're just going to get started on painting this pumpkin. So we're going to be painting it blue. And I know you're probably going, what? It's a pumpkin. And I'm not painting one of those cool teal pumpkins. I'm just doing a blue wash. So just go with me here. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you again.
Okay.
So when I think of boundaries, I did wrestling in high school, and I still enjoy watching college wrestling. And there's a giant circle, 15-foot circle, and the boundaries are that circle. And if the wrestlers leave that area, they're out of bounds, and they have to come back in. So it's like you're not allowed to go past there when you're wrestling. How does that relate to what you're talking about, boundaries?
Yeah, that's a very good example of boundaries, because a boundary it's not a cage, it's not a wall, it's not a border, it's not a fence. It is it's more like an area on a map, right? If you have a school boundary, kids that live in that area, they go to a certain school, they're not stuck in there. There's no wall keeping them there. They might have school choice and can go to another school, right? That's just the designated area. Kids who live in this area are closest to this school, and so this is their boundary, right? Or maybe a hunting boundary, where it's just a designated area. You're allowed to hunt here. You're not allowed to hunt here. There's no fence. However, if you hunt and you cross that boundary, you are subject to Fish and Game coming and taking away your whatever it's called when you hunt. I can't think of that word.
License.
No, the whatever you got, your kill.
Catch.
So your catch, yeah. So that is what I think of when I think of boundaries. It's not so much a fence or a cage or putting your wife or your husband in a shell, or so much as it is setting a distinct area where you have a. Okay.
Sorry, we're having sound issues.
Okay. So when we have a clear understanding of what we desire, what we want a relationship to look like, that is a boundary. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I just want to interject a question. So in my wrestling analogy, relating this to marriage, the boundaries aren't just the physical line, white line that you can't. Well, when you do cross, you have to stop your wrestling action and go back to the middle. But the boundaries are actually that's just one set of boundaries. The whole set of boundaries is all the rules about the wrestling, how like what moves you're allowed to do, how long the periods are going to last. Like there's a whole book on what the rules are for wrestling. So like it's am I right to say that what you're discussing is like all of those are boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, very, very good analogy, because you do have to have some sort of organization and understanding of what's expected, because otherwise, people are just gonna run around. It might be like WWF wrestling, and there's kind of not a lot of boundaries there, and that isn't okay for high school wrestling, right? So for some, maybe for some marriages that's okay. All right, I'm all right with that expectation, but others, no, that's not okay with me. And if you don't know what is okay and what isn't, you're going to really struggle in your marriage, because you're not going to feel validated and heard and respected.
So I'm not going to put myself back on camera because that's usually when the technical sound issues happen. But I'm like, so some relationships boundaries could look like high school wrestling, and then even another relationship, husband and wife, their boundaries could look like college wrestling, and the rules are very similar. But then a third marriage, they could have the rules of WWE, which there are rules. There are expectations, but they're totally different.
Sure.
And then if you go to a like they call it sambo or a jiu-jitsu or other types of grappling, they have totally different rule sets altogether there. So it really, God didn't give us a rule book of how we should operate our
And
marriage.
maybe your marriage doesn't look like wrestling at all. Maybe it's a completely different game. Maybe it looks like ballet. Like it could be a completely different sport entirely. It's whatever set of rules you and your spouse create together. And I don't want to say rules, but expectations, right? That you're comfortable with, that you agree upon. And most people get married and they just kind of fall into some pattern, probably similar to how they were raised, how they saw their parents, and or what they see on TV, media, whatever, and they've never even thought of this. And so their boundaries might look like Grand Central Station, with lines crossing all over, and getting all up in someone else's business, letting everybody into your business, and you really have no idea what you want, what you expect, and you're feeling violated, and nobody respects me, no one listens to me, and you're going to probably have a lot of trust issues, right? So,
well, and one more thing. So when you were talking about how you have to hold yourself to the boundaries, they're not something you impose on another person. In high school wrestling, with all sports, you don't hold your competitor per se. Like you don't control them so that they follow the rules.
yeah.
Like you can't force them to follow the rules. You expect them to, and you hope that the referee does a good job of making sure they're following the rules. But you have to make sure that you simply have to make sure you're following the rules.
Yeah, that's good.
And hope that your competitor, who in the wrestling match is basically your, your associate in the wrestling match, follows the rules.
Yeah. So, it's gonna be different for each person, but it's like the Cheshire Cat answered Alice. when she asked which way she should go. It doesn't really matter where you're going if you don't know where you want to end up. So if you don't have an idea of what your designated area looks like, of what your map looks like, of what's okay with you and what's not okay with you, it really doesn't matter, and you can't really blame anybody for crossing boundaries or not holding your boundaries because you have no idea and they have no idea. So I'd like you to close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to try to visualize a marriage relationship that feels really good to you. If you are struggling in your current relationship, don't visualize that. I want you to visualize what would feel really, really good. What emotions do you experience in that relationship? What things do you accomplish as a couple? What kind of words would describe this ideal relationship? Go ahead and breathe. Now open your eyes and grab your paper and your pencil and just write down some of the words and emotions that you visualized. Try to be really clear and direct and go deeper than feels good, nice, great, happy, right? Try to use words that elicit emotion like enduring, welcoming, camaraderie, etc. If you want to pause and really give this some time, feel free to do that.
Because this is something that I have struggled with personally, is really knowing what I want and being connected with it. And I'm learning to connect deeper with what's important to me. And it's unfortunately not as simple as one would think, right? But Christy has always been connected to what she wants. And I've had a looser, more ethereal connection to it. And it's led to difficulties and struggles in our marriage simply because I don't set boundaries very well, for myself. And so that's something we've been working on, and that's something that I think we're going to be including, we're definitely going to be including in our course, our 6-month course, having a great birth experience, helping both partners know what they want and boundaries around it, and to be able to live into them.
One of the biggest mistakes that we make when learning about boundaries and trying to apply them is we think that boundaries are for other people. We think that we put a boundary up and we impose that on others, and we tell them, this is my boundary and you can't act in such and such a way anymore. Suppose you don't want smoking in your home. That's a boundary. You have clearly defined that. For your home, it's a smoke-free zone. And that is neither good nor bad. That is simply your preference. You may be thinking, what do you mean that's not good or bad? Of course it's good, because smoking is bad for you. And again, I would state that is a preference. Smoking has a negative effect on your health. So if your preference is to live a long, healthy life, then you may assign the label bad to smoking. And if you want to get a nicotine fix or hang out with your friends or feel good, you might assign good to smoking. So when you remove the morality from an issue and you simply view things as preference and recognize that other people have a different value and different preference and priorities than you, then creating boundaries becomes easier. I chose smoking because most of society in the year 2023 would agree that smoking is bad. But if we can view something so extreme as smoking as a preference, then we can understand how smaller issues in our relationship can be viewed as preferences and refrain from labeling them as good or bad. So when we have this idea that we're putting boundaries on everyone else, it sets ourselves up for failure. We feel like no one respects our boundaries, and we're stuck in this defensive or offensive mode, and we put others that we interact with in a defensive or offensive mode, and we start being aggressive towards them. You can't yell at me. You can't hit me anymore. You can't look at pornography. You can't smoke in my house. You better stop smoking. You better get out of here. If you smoke in my house again, I'll call the cops. And pretty soon things can escalate really quickly. And it really doesn't help to try and put boundaries on other people, because everybody knows everyone else can just do whatever they want, right? Yeah, they might have a consequence, like the cops might be called, they might end up in jail, but they can still do what they want. They can still smoke in your house, right? That's their choice. So trying to put those boundaries on other people, it really just sets you up for failure and frustration. So does that mean that we just let people walk all over us? We just become a yes man or a doormat? Am I advocating that you just accept abuse? No. There is a better way. We can hold boundaries without allowing ourselves to be abused and without abusing others. So we're going to add a little bit of orange to this pumpkin, and then we're going to continue on. There's
Pointing sound issues. So while you're beginning to paint the orange, let me just reflect out loud as I'm contemplating here. When you first get into a relationship, it's almost as if you have someone who's got jujitsu rules in their head, and someone else coming in with international wrestling rules of freestyle rules. Totally two different things, two different rule sets. So to have them come together, there's a period of figuring out. Another example, here's a better example maybe for a relationship. You got somebody who comes in and is going to do classical waltz. Like that's the rule set they have in like how the rules around doing a waltz, versus someone who comes in and their partner is they're familiar with, they only know the rules of samba. And so then for them to come together and dance together, it's going to take some working out.
Mm-hmm. And in marriage is rather like a dance. So if you don't know each other's expectations, you definitely struggle in your dance, right? Okay, so as you can see, I am adding this orange here to this pumpkin, and we have, even though it started with a blue base, it gives it kind of that green look that pumpkins have. If you've ever picked a pumpkin out of the field, they have sort of a green undertone when they're not completely ripe. So that's kind of the look I'm going for here. Okay. So, all right, so let's turn to the Bible and see what the master boundary holder can teach us. So Corey, will you go to, actually, yeah, here, use my phone and look up Luke 5:13. We're just going to read that little scenario scene that happens there.
Just verse 13.
Mm-hmm.
And he put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately the leprosy departed from him.
Okay, so a leper, he comes to Jesus and asks to be healed. And Jesus, he doesn't say, oh no, I have boundaries and I don't want to get sick and I don't want to be unclean. You stay away from me, leper. Instead, he says, I will cleanse you. Be thou clean. He touches him, which, that was a big no-no back then. If you touched him, you became unclean. Jesus didn't care. He didn't oh, I created these rules, right? Jesus created the laws around who was clean and who was unclean as a Jew, and he held his boundary, which was a higher law, rather than giving into societal expectations there, right? So he said, be thou clean. He touched him, and immediately that leper was cleansed. There was a time in Jesus's life before he was ready to die when people were very angry and wanted to kill him. They took him up to a hill and they were about to throw him off a cliff, and it was not his time to go. He wasn't ready to die. He didn't turn the other cheek or allow himself to be abused. Neither did he put up his fists and throw some punches and start fighting. Rather, he just walked out of their midst, right? And I love how the Chosen series portrays this experience. He walks out of their midst and he's done. It's not my time to die. Not today, guys. And he just walks away. And sometimes that is our best boundary, is just to remove ourselves from whatever situation we're uncomfortable in. And we're not telling others what to do. He didn't tell everybody, you can't kill me. It's not my time to die. He just walked away. Nope, not today. Not dying today. And that is really important for us to understand and to mimic. And then sorry, get my notes here. Okay. Then when a woman of ill repute came and she washed Jesus's feet with her tears, others thought that Jesus should have set a boundary on her and not allowed her to touch him because it might taint his reputation. In fact, the guy whose house Jesus was at, he didn't even say that, right? Jesus read his thoughts, and he knew what, I think his name was Simon, he knew what he was thinking, and he says, I have something to say to you. This woman came in, and she washed my feet. When I came in, you didn't wash my feet. And this woman, you didn't give me a kiss, but since she came, hasn't ceased to kiss my feet and wipe them with her tears and with her hair, right? And back in Jesus's time, according to my understanding, washing your feet was a symbol of respect when someone was a guest in your home, and that man had not offered that to Jesus. Neither did he anoint his head with oil, and yet here he was judging this woman for doing those things to Jesus. And really, she was just showing great respect and love for her Savior. So Christ knew who he was following. He forgave her of her sins. He wasn't worried about his reputation. He knew where he was going. He knew where he stood. He knew whom he served. And his boundaries were so strongly defined that he wasn't afraid to eat with the publicans and the sinners, and he wasn't worried about leprosy. He was not concerned about what others thought of him. So I would like to release some common beliefs that we hold about boundaries. So I have to hold my ground. I need to let everyone know where I stand. I have to make sure other people respect my boundaries. If I give an inch, they'll take a mile. I have to compromise my boundaries or standards to get along. Nobody respects me. I need to show them they can't treat me that way. I need people to respect my boundaries for me to be happy. If others don't respect my boundaries, I can't hold my boundaries. Breathe. Let all of that go. Breathe that out. Let it go. None of it's true. So then, what is true? When we try to please others or expect others to please us, we are being pulled in every direction. We're not able to go in the defined direction that we desire because we are trying to please so many others, and our path just gets lost in the process. We are responsible only for our own happiness. No one can make us happy. And perhaps you're thinking, Christy, if my kids did the dishes and my husband did all the laundry and cooked the meals every night of the week, that would make me happy. But the truth is, you would still have a choice. You could choose to be happy, or you could choose to find ways to be upset. You washed the whites with the reds, or you burnt the dinner, or that's what you call loading the dishwasher, right? When we choose where we are headed and we assign clear boundaries for ourselves, no one else needs to do or be something for us to make us happy. And we, in turn, do not need to be someone or do something to make others happy. In the book, Ask and It Is Given, it says, often others suffer in their inability to hold themselves in a place of feeling good and ask you to behave in a way that they believe will make them feel better. But not only do they hold you in a place of discomfort as they try to make you responsible for their joy, they hold themselves in a place of bondage as well. For they cannot control the way others behave. And if that control is necessary for their happiness, then they truly are in trouble. Okay, we're going to paint some green on the vines. I'm gonna mix a little bit of yellow here and some blue. Okay. And then I'm just gonna take some water and blend that together. Okay.
I was like, what is that noise? But it's the violin teacher having to record it a second time. The violin teacher is here already.
Yes, some of our girls take violin lessons, and the teacher comes right to our home, which I love. It's very convenient. Super appreciate that. And this is where I wish I was a lefty. Okay. All right. Okay, so then how do we hold boundaries in a way that's beneficial for us and those around us? So let's go back to that smoking example, shall we? It is perfectly reasonable to have a boundary of a smoke-free home. And rather than tell someone they cannot smoke in our home, we let them know our expectations in a loving way. I appreciate a smoke-free home. If you want to smoke, you may smoke out on the sidewalk or wherever designated area you give them, right? What if someone doesn't respect that boundary? It's my house and I'll smoke wherever I want to. Okay, I feel strongly about secondhand smoke, and I will be taking the children and leaving until the smoke is cleared. If this is a serious problem for you in your home, then having a serious discussion and a loving discussion about your values and preferences is definitely in order. If you are new to setting boundaries, expect some pushback. It will be uncomfortable for your spouse and others because change is uncomfortable. Human nature says that we will likely resist it, and they're going to use their manipulative tactics, which we all have, and they're going to try to get their own way and make you go back to the way things were. When you remain firm in your resolve and kindly take action to uphold your desired outcome, they will learn to respect you, and soon it will just be the new normal. So you're going to feel some of that. You're going to have some pushback. It's uncomfortable for people to change. It's uncomfortable when your spouse starts setting boundaries for themselves that you are like, what? Wait, what? This is the pattern we've always run. And even though you may not like that old pattern, it's comfortable to you because that's where you've been, right? So they're going to start setting new boundaries. You're going to start setting new boundaries, and it's okay. Just work through those until they become the new environment that you choose to set for your marriage. It's going to be a struggle, and that's okay. I'm going to give you a personal example. So when I was 15 years old, I decided that I didn't want to watch PG-13 movies. They made me feel uncomfortable, and I would just excuse myself from family movie night if a PG-13 movie was being watched. And at first, that made my father very upset. He did not like me to separate myself from the family, and he tried to tell me that the movies weren't that bad, that I could just close my eyes in a scene I didn't like, that they could fast forward it. But I remained firm, and I would just excuse myself, and I asked my dad that if he wanted me to participate, that he please pick a movie that wasn't PG-13. After a few months, my dad realized that I was serious, and that I did not impose my boundaries on him. I didn't tell him or the rest of the family that they were bad or evil or wicked for watching whatever movies they chose. I simply excused myself, and he began to change. And when the family picked a movie for family movie night, he would say, make sure it's a movie that everyone can watch. And within a few years, most of my family made the choice to stop watching PG-13 movies altogether. And I rarely got teased or belittled for my choices anymore. So that may or may not occur for you. You might get more pushback than that. But as you remain firm in your resolve, excusing yourself and setting boundaries and having discussions and helping people understand this is what's important to me, and this letting them explain what's important to them, and recognizing that there's different values and different preferences, you can have a much better relationship with strong boundaries without trying to force anybody or push anybody or impose anything on anyone else. And you can feel respected and okay, even if they're not listening to you. Just like people trying to throw Jesus off a cliff, he was still okay with where he was and what he was doing. Just walked away. He just excused himself, right? I am going to add a little bit more orange to this pumpkin, and then we're going to install some new beliefs around boundaries.
Really quick, I just want to make a comment here about the discomfort of change. It's an analogy that relates to dancing. And this woman was telling a story of a friend who was a dance instructor. And I think it was ballet. Anyway, she was trying to teach a young ballet dancer how to properly align her hips to be able to raise her leg even higher. Like, I think it was that her hips had to be straight in order for her leg to go higher. And she was young, and it felt most comfortable being slightly out, like her hip. And even though in the beginning she could get it higher, there was a limit there. And if she learned to have it straight, she could have a bigger range in the future. Anyway, so she had the girl straighten her hip and then raise her leg, and she's like, but it feels uncomfortable. And the dance instructor,
she said, it feels crooked.
It feels crooked. It feels crooked. And she said, the instructor said to the little girl, yes, it feels crooked, but it's right. And in time, it'll feel right.
She said, okay, crooked is good. And that sometimes this new normal, what feels awkward, what feels crooked, will become what's right. It will become okay, and it won't feel wrong or crooked anymore, right?
It'll become the new normal over time.
Mm-hmm. And safe and respectful, and as long as it is within what you are okay with, as long as you have decided that that's an okay boundary for you, then okay. It might feel a little difficult for your spouse to accept your boundaries and for you to accept theirs, but you'll get used to it after a little while, and it'll feel a lot better. And as Tori and I have experienced that, in the last year, we've really been diving deep into a lot of emotional stuff and mindset work and all sorts of things. And I wasn't used to. I'm sorry, buddy. We're still filming. Can you be quiet? So Corey and I have been really diving deep into mindset work, and as he's been holding boundaries that, he used to just be pretty indifferent to things, and rather than have a conversation that might be difficult, he'd just go whatever, walk away, or give in to whatever I wanted. And as he has been holding his new, stronger boundaries, it was a little uncomfortable for me. And I'm like, whoa, what's this? I'm not used to that. But I actually, in reality, I really prefer it. I really prefer him speaking up for himself and choosing to hold boundaries. And I have to respect those, because I really do. I'm like, wow, I respect that, because it shows stronger character. It shows that he actually cares in our relationship, because he's no longer checked out. He's willing to have those hard conversations, and I super appreciate that. So it might feel a little uncomfortable, but it will be better.
Yeah, it's not natural, or at least as far as I can tell, it's not natural for someone just to figure out on their own without some help what their values or intentions truly are deep down. I mean, some people maybe.
Yeah. And some people, naturally have some stronger boundaries, and that's okay. But as you practice that and you start working on it, it's all right for it to feel off and to feel different, and to just work on that. Okay, here's what we want. Here's what we desire. How do we get there? Here's what I'm okay with. Here's what you're okay with. All right, let's not be crisscrossing all over in each other's boundaries. Let's respect that, and it feels good. Okay, so new beliefs to install about boundaries. I know where I am going in my relationship. I lovingly set boundaries for myself and remain firm in my resolve to uphold them. I am strong when I remain firm in my character and resolve to hold my boundaries. I am only able to set boundaries for myself. I respect the boundaries of others. Breathe those in. Okay. So, I hope you enjoy our fall pumpkin, and I hope you can get clear on what boundaries you want and you're okay with, and stay firm in holding your resolve and choosing what you can do, what you have control over, and don't worry about other people and what you can't control. I feel like that has really changed my ability to hold boundaries and to enjoy relationships at a deeper, more meaningful level, and at a safer, more validating level.
And it's not comfortable in the beginning. I can attest to that, but it's worth it.
Okay, so thank you, and we'll see you next time.